This is Joe Biden, the President of the United States. Back in December 2020, several news outlets reported that then President Donald Trump was considering granting preemptive pardons to several people in his inner circle, and Joe Biden was asked about it.
President Trump is reportedly considering a wave of preemptive pardons for his adult children and for Rudy Giuliani. He's also floated the idea in private conversations, according to our reporting, of possibly pardoning himself, which he insists he has the power to do, though that has never been litigated. Does this concern you? All these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws. And you're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons.
So, multiple sources familiar with the matter claimed that Trump was going to preemptively pardon members of his family, even though it wasn't clear why they would need a pardon in the first place. But it became quite the discussion on cable news networks.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
Here it's an effort not only to prospectively pardon people for things they have not yet been charged with and may never be charged with, but also it's the president's own family.
And is there an innocent explanation for someone to seek preemptive pardons for family members? Would you do that if you knew you were innocent and just worried about outside forces?
The answer to that is going to be no. And if you haven't done anything wrong, you sit there and go, what do you need a preemptive pardon for?
Now, as it turns out, Donald Trump giving preemptive pardons to anyone was literally fake news. In the meantime, it turns out that Joe Biden was lying again.
We have breaking news right now. Joe Biden has just, according to Jonathan Muir, has just issued a series of pardons.
He is pardoning now. I'll just read from it. I'm exercising my authority under the Constitution to pardon General Mark A. Milley, Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the members of Congress and staff who served on the January 6th Select Committee, and U.S. Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers who testified before the Select Committee.
Wait a second. If Dr. Anthony Fauci and General Mark Milley haven't done anything wrong, then why would they need preemptive pardons?
He goes on to say the issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense.
But that's not what critics of President Trump said about his potential preemptive pardons.
It begs the question, why is there a need for a pardon here in the first place? People who've done nothing wrong do not need to be pardoned.
They say that they haven't done anything wrong. Well, why would you be pardoning them preemptively if you didn't think they might have done something wrong?
And did the recipients of those preemptive pardons turn Biden down? I mean, if you're not guilty, then there's no reason to accept them, right? Right?
General Milley has accepted the pardon, and now Dr. Anthony Fauci in a statement says he is grateful for the pardon he received from President Biden. He just received word from his attorney this morning the pardon had gone through. He says, quote, "It feels good, and I'm grateful to the president for doing it." Also, Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn, who many of us have come to know, who heroically defended the Capitol on January 6th and became an outspoken critic of Donald Trump, even ran for office. He now says, "I'm eternally grateful to President Joe Biden, not just for the preemptive pardon, but for the leadership and service to this nation."
So again, any criticism made towards Trump 4 years ago absolutely applies to Joe Biden in the here and now.
If he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people have committed crimes. And we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
It does. It really seems to me that it would send the message, yeah, we're guilty of something.
If there was no belief in criminality, why would he think a pardon was necessary?
And yet, Joe Biden gave Adam Schiff a preemptive pardon. I mean, if there was no belief in criminality, then why would Joe Biden think a pardon was necessary? I mean, come on. You know why. So with less than 20 minutes left in his failed term in office, Joe Biden did what the media warned against, well, at least when it was Trump, because Biden preemptively pardoned several members of his family. I know you're shocked.
We have some breaking news we want to share related to all this. President Biden pardoning his family members minutes before President-elect Trump is sworn in. I want to go to our senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett. Laura, walk us through it.
Yeah, Lester, a rare and sweeping pardon here from the president in just his final moments while he still occupies that office, pardoning all of his living siblings and their spouses, including James Biden, Sarah Biden, Valerie Owens Biden, his sister, her husband, John T. Owens, and his brother, Francis Biden. Now, Lester, none of these people have been charged with crimes, but he says he's doing this because there is partisan politics here, obviously referring to the president-elect who's set to take office just minutes from now, Lester.
Again, I need to point out that when the fake news reported that Trump was going to preemptively pardon his family members, the media wouldn't shut up about it.
And I imagine if he decides to issue these preemptive pardons, it will be cast in a way that he is protecting his family and protecting their reputations from, villainous exterior forces that are against him.
If the president does indeed pardon, let's say, Rudy Giuliani or any members of his family, would you see that as essentially an admission of guilt?
I certainly would view it that way. I think millions of Americans would view it that way.
Oh, the irony. So where were the 10-minute segments on cable news networks blasting Joe Biden for preemptively pardoning his family? Oh, right, they don't exist. Instead, the media had bigger fish to fry.
On the evening of his inauguration, President Donald Trump not wasting any time getting down to business. He has just returned to the White House and is signing a series of executive actions in the Oval Office, where he is pardoning some 1,500 January 6 rioters who have been convicted for participating in the attack on the Capitol 4 years ago.
And just moments ago, literally in the last 15 minutes, in the Oval Office, which is a choice, Trump issued pardons for approximately 1,500 people convicted of crimes related to that attack and commuted the sentences of 6 others as well. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that.
Yes, Jen, we know. I mean, you haven't been able to shut up about J6 for the last 4 years, so why should the next 4 years be any different?
This is part of what candidate Trump campaigned on. He said that he would pardon those who were convicted on January 6th. I have to say, of all of his policies, this is not a popular one. According to recent polling, 2/3 oppose him pardoning those who've been convicted of crimes on January.
But one could argue that public sentiment towards the January 6ers has been shaped by Democrats and the media because politics. Of the approximately 1,500 people charged with crimes related to January 6th, 172 were convicted of assaulting police officers. But in many cases, their convictions seemed like an overreach. Take, for example, the case of Kyle Campbell.
What did you do on January 6th?
I went just with the intention of just going to see it. I've been a Trump supporter since 2016. And it just seemed like it was going to be a good time. I had questions about the 2020 election.
Campbell admits he was wrong in going on to the U.S. Capitol grounds. He says video shown in court shows he was pushed from behind into a police officer twice, and that led to the assault on an officer charge against him.
Okay, pause. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., yes, he was pushed from behind into an officer carrying a riot shield, who then pushed back with the riot shield. Then Campbell forcibly rushed the officer and then hit the officer's shield several times. That's objectively not a violent assault.
So I get pushed back into the police officer. I've got my hands up now, more of a defensive thing. I'm in a mob with people and a police line right in front of me.
Did you ever go inside the building?
I did not. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't damage any property.
Campbell was sentenced to 4 months in federal prison for being on the Capitol grounds and for punching a riot shield. And we're supposed to be upset that he was pardoned? Nope. 0 f***s given. Then there is the case of Gabriel Garcia, a J6er who was interviewed by Paola Ramos for MSNBC on Inauguration Day.
Do you have any regrets at all?
No regrets at all.
No regrets?
0.
The last time you and I talked was exactly almost 2 years ago, and you specifically said, I regret going that day, and you said if I could have, I would have never gone to Washington, D.C. Those were your words.
Yeah, no,
did you mean that?
No, I didn't mean it.
Okay, so what exactly did Gabriel Garcia do on January 6th?
I want to remind people of what he did, right? Gabriel is someone that live streamed himself storming the Capitol on January 6th. He's someone that as he was live streaming himself, you can see him interfering with Capitol police officers.
All right, let's stop right there. According to a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., Garcia was found guilty of 2 felonies: obstruction of an official proceeding, i.e. he was in the Capitol building, and interference with law enforcement during a civil disorder. And that all sounds bad until you actually read the rest of the press release. Garcia proceeded to the Capitol and joined a mob that unlawfully entered the building. Garcia commemorated his incursion into the Capitol building in a series of videos that he live streamed to Facebook. Oh my God!
He's also someone that you can see him in the rotunda, not just using very aggressive language, insulting police officers, but also calling Nancy Pelosi by her name, saying, "Nancy, come out and play."
So according to the DOJ press release, Garcia yelled at police officers calling them effing traitors, then recorded himself saying, "Nancy, come out and play," and then later chanting menacingly, "Nancy, Nancy." Of course, none of that matters because Garcia wasn't charged with saying bad words to cops and calling out to the Speaker of the House because the First Amendment exists. Almost 45 minutes after entering the Capitol building, Garcia joined a group of rioters who were collectively attempting to push through a line of officers who were guarding a doorway. Garcia and the rioters were unsuccessful, and Garcia was removed from the building approximately 1 hour after he first entered. And so Gabriel Garcia initially faced 28 years in prison, and Paulo Ramos thinks that he deserved to go to prison for being in a Capitol building, trying to push through a doorway, and saying mean things to cops and calling out Nancy Pelosi's first name like Luther in The Warriors.
Warriors, come out to play!
Look, you don't have to like what he did. I'm not defending it per se, but I'm not particularly upset about his pardon either. In fact, the more Democrats cry about J6, the less I care.
You cannot say you back the blue if you are going to let out of jail violent criminals who assaulted the blue. For a party that claims to have the high moral ground when defending the rule of law, law and order, and backing the blue, these pardons are the height of hypocrisy.
I find it impossible to give a shit about what Democrat Congressman Dan Goldman says about Republicans not caring about police officers. It was his party that encouraged violent riots during the summer of George Floyd. It was his party that called for defunding the police, for commuting the sentence of Leonard Peltier, who was convicted of murdering 2 FBI agents. I wonder if you'll ever hear Dan Goldman or any Democrat denouncing Joe Biden for commuting the sentence of Leonard Peltier, who was convicted of murdering 2 FBI agents. Nope, and I guarantee that they never will. If you think that granting a pardon to someone who supposedly assaulted a cop is worse than commuting the sentence of a murderer, then your opinion does not count. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time, if there is a next time.